Jim, it's a pleasure to welcome you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Linux has been a foundation for many other technologies. When you look at it now, we talk about AI, Gen AI, but we forget other technologies like Kubernetes and other things associated with Linux. Wanted to get an understanding from you, and who better than you to ask this, as you know, why do people still think that Linux is limited? It has done a lot more than what people think. So I think it's good to learn from you the agility and the opportunity that Linux provides.
Sure, Linux is the foundation of almost every modern computing system on the planet. I think one of the things people don't understand about Linux, because they're used to using their desktop computer every day, Windows or maybe a Mac device, is that every other computer on Earth is essentially running Linux. It's 100% market share in supercomputing. It's underneath every Android device, so about 80% share in the mobile computing sector. In IoT, embedded systems, in enterprise computing, in cloud computing, it's the vast majority of the underpinnings of computing on Earth. And the reason is that Linux is really unique in that anyone can use it for anything. And so it's leapt from, an enterprise server to high-performance computing to small mobile devices to tiny home and embedded systems in a way that's unprecedented. And everyone can use this fundamental building block, and they do every single day. So, what I say to people when they want to think about Linux and how it impacts their lives is every time you withdraw money from a bank, you're using Linux. Every time you use the internet, you're using Linux. When you're driving a car, any modern automobile, the in-vehicle systems are Linux. It's just a ubiquitous part of all of our daily lives. You just wouldn't know it.
On that note, I think it'll be much better, I feel, that if Linux is introduced as an innovation technology for startup entrepreneurs. So how do you think we can influence the startups?
The startups already know this, so there's not an entrepreneur on Earth. I think the best example is when Mark Zuckerberg took Facebook public. In one of his famous notes, he talked about being relentlessly open. And the reason is he didn't go, buy an enterprise server, license Solaris, buy, BEA middleware when Facebook was starting. He took, a general purpose hardware stack, Linux, MySQL, an entire open source stack, and used that at no cost or very low cost to create Facebook. Didn't need to license anything, didn't need to ask permission. And that is how every startup is built these days. If you're building an AI company now, you're using open source building blocks, whether it's PyTorch or things like Delta Lake for data lake technology or ML Flow for ML pipelines. Every single component, even the stuff that built OpenAI itself, is essentially open source. So startups intuitively know this because they share one thing in common with the open source community, and that's they don't have a lot of resources, so they need to be scrappy.
Finally, Jim, again, I'm coming back to entrepreneurial ecosystem, and you have been here for a long time. There have been the highs and the troughs, and with the new buzzword, which is the Gen AI and AI, everybody's trying to clamor and see how they can band together to, be influenced and then impact through these technologies. What is your advice to entrepreneurs, who are not just leveraging the new technologies, but to make them understand that it's always a marathon, it's not a sprint?
The number one advice I would give them when they're building their ML solutions or, creating a foundation model or working on some aspect of machine learning and AI is to get into these open source communities and try and understand what the basic building blocks are. The great thing about open source is that it's freely available and there's lots of it. The bad thing about open source is freely available and there's lots of it, meaning it's hard to figure out what should I pick to build my solution. Should I use TensorFlow or should I use PyTorch? Should I use this library versus that library? By being in the community, you're going to get better at that implicit futures contract to know that, hey, PyTorch kind of has all the momentum. I can bet on that technology, use it in my solutions, and I'm going to be able to count on that being a big ecosystem for a long time. So get into these communities, start participating. The Linux Foundation is a great place to go and understand what these emerging critical open source components are for machine learning and large language models. That's the way that I think they're best suited to understand.
Jim, thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for doing what you do. You have inspired hundreds of thousands of people through this, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.